This is Chip Maxwell, and you're listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. What is an irrevocable life insurance trust, and why should I do it? How much should I depend on an inheritance being part of my retirement plan? And right before my retirement, should I focus more on paying off debt or piling up more money in my account? David Brooks has answers to these questions in today's Q&A episode. Into the Q&A we go, David. First question is about an irrevocable life insurance trust, an ILIT. Someone told me I ought to explore an ILIT, an irrevocable life insurance trust. But it sounded really complicated. Can you explain it? Why would I do it? Who benefits from it?
Okay, so it's an eyelid, not an eyelid. So, I've had somebody ask for the eyelid, I-L-I-T, eyelid, right? And that's exactly right. It's an irrevocable life insurance trust. It's a trust created that you make a gift to life insurance. So if you own life insurance, so let's cover the basic. And by the way, it's not complicated. It's very easy to set up, and it's a few $100s in most cases to create one. So it's not that complicated. So there are many versions of trust, revocable and irrevocable. An irrevocable trust is you make a gift to a trust. You have given that asset away. In this example, life insurance, you cannot take it back. Okay, it's an irrevocable gift. So once you've done this, you can't change it. So why would you do it? How do you benefit from it? And is it complicated? The answer is no, it's not complicated. It's changing the titling on life insurance you may currently have in place. Or if you work with a competent financial professional, they may recommend a life insurance policy put in place on you or your spouse or both in what's called a survivor life policy. In other words, it insures 2 heartbeats, not one, makes it cheaper to buy typically, to prevent your estate from having to pay inheritance or estate taxes, or at least to cover said taxes. Now today, Chip, we have a very high estate tax exemption. It was just pushed through in the big, beautiful bill, permanent until, the next election cycles, as far as permanent goes. You can exempt $15 million of assets before you have to pay the federal government an estate tax. But that number was scheduled to go to $5 million, and most likely will get cut in the future when our government needs to pay off the revenue. So by placing your life insurance, let's say you own $1 million life insurance policy right now. You've had it in place for many years. You bought it. Maybe it's a cash value. Maybe it's a permanent policy, a whole life policy. These were very common, sold from the big box financial firms like Mass Mutual and Northwest Mutual, et cetera. There's nothing wrong with owning them. And they build up this cash value, but most people realize they don't need it. It's an extra asset, but they have this $1 million death benefit. That death benefit will always pay out to your beneficiary, most likely your children, 100% income tax-free. However, that death benefit is calculated as a value as part of your estate. So if in the future, the estate tax, say the exemption goes back down to $5 million, as many people are predicting, and let's say you have an estate worth $10 million when you pass. Maybe you own a simple family farm and realize the value is up there. The $5 million that is over that threshold would be susceptible to up to a 40% tax federally. Of course, Nebraska is one of 6 states that still imposes an inheritance tax. And my home state where I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, is the only state that charges both on the state level an inheritance and an estate tax on top of the federal taxes.
40% of $5 million, $2 million bucks?
You are correct. So what you could do is if the life insurance was held outside of your estate, that $1 million is not. So if you had a $10 million estate with land and investments, that $1 million death benefit takes it to $11 million. You'd pay 40% of that as well. But if it's inside the irrevocable trust, it is not calculated for part of that tax. And you can use that cash to pay the tax. So it just takes planning, right? And whether you believe legislative risk, something we'll be talking about it at our speaker series coming up, has the ability to change us in the future. So we recommend everybody, if they have permanent insurance and they're not going to need it, to remove it from ownership and place it just to be safe. And it's a very simple thing to do, but it's a great question.
Boy, well, there's the answer to the question. Why do it? Tremendous tax advantages can flow from it. All right, David, the next question, well, speaking of inheritance, the next question is about inheritance. How wise is it to count on an inheritance as part of my retirement plan? Unless something goes horribly wrong, I'll get a significant amount of money from my mom, which would more than cover my income needs in my later years. I don't want to rely too heavily on that money, but I also don't want to save so much now that I can't enjoy my present life and then end up with more than I need when I'm 75? How should I approach this?
Hey, this is a great question. It's a very real planning question that you should be talking with your financial professional about. So, do you know the inheritance amount? And it's great if parents have shared that with you. However, if there's other siblings, are you sure that? So first thing was, are you sure that that's really the plan? Because sometimes people expect an inheritance, and lo and behold, mom and dad gave it to the church or charity.
It can get ugly.
Yeah. And so having these conversations with your parents, if they're coherent and alive, is a great tool. The other thing is we could start gifting strategies now where the parents, to avoid the estate tax we just talked about in the previous question, could potentially start to slide some of that inheritance down to you now to benefit you. So it's about having a good, holistic plan that covers your income needs now and in the future, the taxation of those income needs, both your assets and the ones you might inherit, the risk management of your portfolio, because all this can be dialed in with some really in-depth questioning by a competent advisor. So it's a great question, and you should sit down with a professional to work through this, and then we'll have a good idea. How much do you want to weight that inheritance, right? When do you think it will happen? The other thing is your parents may live longer than you think. Longevity is a very real thing, so you may not get those dollars until you're older. We have a client who is now 75, and parents are still here with us. We had one parent, the parent of a client, turn 104. So, I mean, I think that's fantastic. So, again, don't count on that money coming too quickly.
David, one more question. This one is about debt versus savings. I have about 4 years left until retirement, and I'd really like to have $1 million in my 401k when I finish working. I should be able to achieve that if I save aggressively, but I also have a lot of debt. Should I focus more on paying off the debt or piling up more money in my account?
I think we had a similar question last year, at the end of the year, when I talked about the story where I paid off a mortgage I really didn't want to pay off, right? An interest arbitrage, right?
Well, how expensive is the debt? That's what it came down to. So
that's the exact thing, is you need to do a calculation or have us do it for you. We're happy to do it, is what is the anticipated earnings? How long a time horizon are you going to continue contributing to that 401k? When are you retiring? So if it's 3 to 5 years out, we wouldn't say take an aggressive stance. But if it's 7 or 10 years out, we love that idea. In other words, you got some time for these assets to grow and work and go through markets ups and downs, et cetera. How much are you averaging on a diversified portfolio, and what's the interest rate you're paying? Now, hopefully, again, we don't know. Hopefully, the interest you're paying is reduced because you maybe refinance some of that debt at lower rates in the past few years when rates were suppressed significantly. Rates ran up the last 2 years or so, but it's an interest arbitrage. Are you earning more than you're paying in interest? Then let our positive arbitrage run in your favor, and we'd be happy to help you dial that calculation in. Great question.
Thank you for listening to the Retire Smart podcast with David Brooks. If you want to learn how to generate lifetime income, reduce your tax bill, and maintain your lifestyle in retirement, visit retiresmartpodcast.com. And make sure to subscribe to keep up with new episodes every week.